Dale's did a good job there. And since we have a couple minutes before Mike comes up, I'm sorry, Matt comes up, and that's the next right. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'll just, after Matt, then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to have some speakers this afternoon to keep talking about these different challenges and these different opportunities we have here. And Matt is the head of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. What is it, about 21 years now, Matt?
Democracy Campaign is celebrating our 25th anniversary next year.
Right? I took my head out of the sand in 2003. I looked around, and the first place I found was them, and I've been a member since. You know, their primary objective at the beginning, at the map that is morphing here, was follow the money. The simplest way to say it. But they are so much more now, and they are doing so much more with this movement that is happening. And I don't need to say anything. Most of you know Matt. If you don't, you should get to know Matt. And I'm going to give it to Matt.
Thank you, George. It's great to be back in Menomnonie and to see a lot of old friends here and to see some new friends here. You know, I'm a bird watcher, so I always let people know the birds that I saw on my way up. There were a lot of American egrets down in Dane and Columbia County on the way up, and then sandhill cranes, red-tailed hawks, and then as I got closer up here, a pileated woodpecker flew across the street. So that's always a good omen for me. I want to thank George Penn for all the organizing he's been doing, and Jim Christ and everybody else from Wisconsin United to Amend, the amazing work that this volunteer organization has done in this state over the last many years, getting 144 communities to pass resolutions or referendums that proclaim with absolute common sense that, you know, corporations actually aren't persons, and money actually isn't speech, and that we need to amend the U.S. Constitution to put that stuff in writing so that we can have a decent control over our electoral process, so that we the people can rule and not the corporations and the special interests. And it's that grassroots orientation of Wisconsin United to Amend and the grassroots orientation of this redistricting movement, this movement to ban gerrymandering, that is so exciting for me. Community by community, we are educating our fellow citizens about what's messed up about our democracy and how we fix the democracy. And we fix it one person at a time and one community at a time. And that's what Wisconsin United to Amend has been doing. And that's what Dale Schultz and Tim Cullen and the Fair Maps Coalition and Lena and Rich and all the other people involved in this movement to ban gerrymandering in Wisconsin. 47 counties have passed county board resolutions telling the folks in Madison, pass a law, ban gerrymandering. 8 counties have already passed referendums by overwhelming margins. The citizens in those counties, not the board members, the citizens voting by overwhelming margins that we need to ban gerrymandering and actually have fair elections where we really do have one person, one vote. And this is what's been concerning me most, is just the fragility of our democracy. That over the last many years, our democracy doesn't work, isn't working properly, isn't functioning properly. George said he doesn't think we have a democracy anymore, and I hear that. And when you see Jennifer Lawrence in that video talking about, you know, what the people want, you know, they only have a 30% chance of getting it. I read that Princeton study, and they said, and this is virtually a verbatim quote, the majority does not rule. And that's not what we're taught in 7th grade civics class, if there still is 7th grade civics class being taught, or in high school social studies classes. But our democracy is not functioning well. It's not functioning well because for many elected officials, they view their constituents not as the people who actually live in their district, but as they believe their donors are their constituents. They're serving their donors, not the people who vote in their election in their district. I want to salute Dale Schultz, who I've gotten to know over the last many years at the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, who's a hero of mine. He also happens to be one of the happiest men in Wisconsin. I don't know, you might see him skip out the door today, but he is one of the happiest men in Wisconsin because he stood on principle and would not toe the party line or the corporate line on Act 10, which he voted against. And on the mining law, which he also voted against, the mining law that was written by lawyers for the mining companies that go get us and these were courageous acts. You know, when he decided not to run again, he was quoted in the newspaper as saying, and I'm sick, you know, with all these special interest groups like ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and these other groups, you know, why do you even need legislators? Get rid of the middleman. I mean, I'm tired of being a feudal serf for the folks with money. That was his quote. And so he can wake up every morning and look himself in the mirror and be happy with what he sees. That's why he's such an inspiring leader. I also want to salute a friend of Dale Schultz's, Senator Rob Coles, Republican from the Green Bay area, who was the only Republican to vote against the horrible rewrite of our campaign finance law back in 2015. And I want to talk a little bit about that campaign finance law because this gets to the heart of the matter. Because what it did, well, for the first time, it allowed corporations to donate to political parties for the first time in more than 100 years. Corporations can now give $12,000 to political parties and $12,000 to legislative campaign committees. In my naivete, when I was at the Progressive, I was at the Progressive magazine for 32 years, and you know, sometimes we thought we were on top of Mount Olympus and didn't have to deal with statewide stuff. And if Scott Walker taught us anything over the last 8 years, how important it is to be involved in state politics. But I didn't know that there were even such things as legislative campaign committees. And the legislative campaign committees are actually run by the leaders of the majority leader and the minority leader in the Senate, and the speaker and the minority leader in the Assembly. And now corporations can give $12,000 to those committees too. And so there's just tremendous amount of influence that corporations can give right now. And poor Fighting Bob LaFolle must be rolling over in his grave. Fighting Bob LaFolle, the great senator and governor from Wisconsin, dedicated his whole life to fighting corporate power and the corporate corruption of our politics. And now it's grown dramatically over the many years. And it's been allowed to grow even more by that 2015 rewrite. A couple other things they did in that 2015 rewrite. Number one, they doubled the amount that rich people in Wisconsin can give to their favorite candidate for governor. It used to be that if you could afford it, you could write a $10,000 check to your favorite candidate for governor. And that was a ridiculously high amount as it was. Now, rich and poor alike can write checks for $20,000 to their favorite candidate for governor. And they also tore down the ceiling on contributions to political parties. There used to be a de facto $10,000 limit that you could give if you were rich enough to politics in Wisconsin. $10,000 was the aggregate limit. So if you gave $10,000 to the Republican Party of Wisconsin, you couldn't give a dime to Dale Schultz, you couldn't give a dime to you know, your favorite candidate for governor or anything. $10,000 and you were out. There used to be an expression among rich people who were interested in politics in Wisconsin. That expression was, I maxed out. They actually liked the expression because that meant whenever another candidate or party or special interest called them up for money during election time, you could say, sorry, I maxed out. I spent my 10 grand. Leave me the F alone. You know, I'm done. The expression maxed out is an extinct expression in Wisconsin because there is no way you can max out. There's no way a rich person can max out in Wisconsin right now. Why? Because in that 2015 rewrite, they tore down the ceiling, literally tore, well, metaphorically tore down the ceiling on contributions to political parties. So super rich people in Wisconsin are writing checks for $1 million to the Republican Party of Wisconsin or the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. You don't even have to live in Wisconsin to write $1 million check to a political party. The co-owner of the Chicago Cubs, Marlene Ricketts, doesn't even live in Wisconsin, lives in Omaha, Nebraska, wrote $1 million check to the Republican Party of Wisconsin last year. So the donations pouring into the parties, and then the parties can then turn around and give it to the candidates. So there's a $20,000 limit on how much you can give to the candidate, but then you can give an unlimited amount of money to that candidate's party, and that party can then turn around and give that back to the candidate. And here's another way to make a mockery of these limits on direct donations to political candidates. If I'm running for governor and I have a billionaire friend, I'm going to tell my billionaire friend, you know, you could write me a check for $20,000, I'd love it, but actually I've got a better idea because I know you don't want to be exposed to someone who's throwing so much money around and maybe I'll do you a favor later and we don't have a trail for that. So here's a better idea. Instead of writing me a check for $20,000, write a check for $2 million, which is 100 times the legal limit, and write it to this funky organization with the antiseptic name Badgers for Eternal Victory. Write a check for $2 million to Bev, and you know what? I'm going to go work with Bev. I'm going to tell Bev what ad to run. I'm going to produce the ad, and then tell Bev what stations to run that ad on. And the neat thing is, Bev doesn't have to report that my billionaire friend gave Bev a single dime. It would be just as though my billionaire friend gave me the $2 million, but that would be illegal. And everybody would know, because I had to disclose. But this, because the legislature and our corrupt Wisconsin Supreme Court said that candidates can now coordinate with outside groups that don't say vote for or vote against, but what Bev could do with my $2 million would say, Matt's opponent is molesting children. Please call Matt's opponent at 608 whatever and tell Matt's opponent to stop molesting children, and we're good to go, because they're not using the magic words of vote for or vote against. And so there's a total end around our ability to limit the influence of big money in our politics right now in Wisconsin. And it's not just, you know, a big influence that Republicans have, though Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce has a huge influence. American Legislative Exchange Council, the Koch brothers have a huge influence about what goes on in the Capitol, but there's smelly money on the Democratic side too. Just a couple weeks ago, we posted on our website at wisdc.org an article that our research director, Mike Bulow, a former Associated Press reporter, wrote for us. It was about a company in Marinette that gave $15,000 to the Democratic Governors Association. Now, the Democratic Governors Association spent about $30 million to try to help Tony Evers get elected. 3 weeks after that $15,000 contribution came in January, Governor Evers put in the budget a $31 million subsidy for that same Marinette shipbuilding company. Now, I'm not saying the one thing automatically led to the other, but it is smelly. And we've got to do something about big money, dark money, and smelly money in our system, because it's taking our power away, and it's making people believe, as was in the film, that our votes don't matter, because a lot of times they don't seem to matter. So we absolutely have to solve this problem of money in politics. We're working with Senator Chris Larson now in Milwaukee, and Melissa Sargent, Representative Melissa Sargent in Madison, who've introduced bills that would at least roll back some of those disasters that happened in that 2015 rewrite. But at some point, we got to get to full public financing of our elections so that no one is in the pocket of the special interests. And we have our voices, and we can project our voices. I do want to talk about the need to work at the grassroots. Grassroots work is crucial. I am a student of Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn wrote A People's History of the United States. He was a professor at Boston University, and he wrote for The Progressive over the last 12 years of his life. It was one of the joys of my professional life to be able to get to know Howard Zinn a little and work with him, and how inspiring he was. And he always talked about social change happening from below. You look at the civil rights movement, you look at the women's movement, you look at the gay rights movement. The gay rights movement, by the way, one of the great nonviolent revolutions of our lifetimes. And that's how things change. They didn't change by electing this person or that person or hoping for a magical change in the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court. It happened by talking to people, one person at a time, in our families, in our workplaces. And, you know, I just think we need to take this issue of corruption in our politics, this issue of banning gerrymandering, of limiting money in our politics. We've got to take that to our neighbors. And, you know, Dale's right. I mean, a little listening goes a long way. And hectoring doesn't go that far. And telling people that they're just, you know, they don't know what they're talking about is an end of a conversation. It's not the beginning of a conversation. And so we need to do that. My least favorite bumper sticker these days are, and I saw that at some Democratic county affairs that I'd go talk to, was facts matter. And I do believe in facts. I mean, I believe in logic and rationality. I believe in the Enlightenment, though I think we're at the dusk of the age of Enlightenment. But to put on your bumper sticker, facts matter, is telling people who are passing by who don't agree with your other bumper stickers is, you know, I'm smarter than you are, you don't know anything, you know, get lost. And so I think we need to do a better job of communicating with people at a values level. What is the country that you want to see? What is the best part of America? What is the best part of just being a loving and kind human being? And what is the just society that we see? And if we can engage in those kinds of conversations with people who are amenable to conversation, and I'm not saying everybody is, but I know a lot of people who disagree with me politically. I'm a card player. I play cards with people who, you know, are obviously on the other side politically. I have people come up to me and say, you're the only, you know, Democrat or progressive I've ever liked. That's a plus, I think, you know, that's a start. And they're not evil people. This demonization that's been going on, I mean, it's one thing if someone's flying a Nazi flag, and how unbelievable is it in America that people are flying Nazi flags? My father fought in World War II, as I'm sure many of yours might have as well. But leaving aside that tiny fraction of people who are probably not the best people to talk to on the subject, and may be dangerous for you to do so, a lot of people who don't agree with you are really decent people, and we need to find a way in talking with people, and people rightfully feel like they are being neglected and talked down to and dismissed. That was the whole theme of Kathy Kramer's book, The Politics of Resentment. She's a professor at the University of Wisconsin. Some of you are nodding your heads. You know her work, really important book. So we need to respect our neighbors, listen to our neighbors, engage with our neighbors. You know, on this issue of money in politics, vast majority of people agree that the super wealthy people and businesses have too much influence over our politics. Dale mentioned the poll from Marquette Law School earlier this year. 72% of Wisconsinites want to ban gerrymandering, 62% of Republicans, 76% of independents agree with that. These are really popular. People get it. I don't think we need to talk to people explicitly about corruption. People get the corruption. They know the thing is corrupt. What they don't know is how to fix it. What they don't get is the strategy to go from, oh my God, this thing is just so corrupt, to how do we solve it? And that's why I think it's so important. I think we have a map at Wisconsin Democracy Campaign that shows the 47 counties in purple on the state of Wisconsin, and it's amazing. And at Farmers Market once a month we table down in Madison with this huge blow up of the map. And when you look at the map, it's really impressive. And people come by from all sorts of different counties and say, you know, oh my God, I didn't know our county board voted for it, or how do I get my county board to vote for it? I'm not content with 47 counties. I want 67 counties to the 72, or 70, or all of them. I'm not content with 144 communities that say, you know, we got to amend the U.S. Constitution. I want 288, or 300, or 350, because there will come a point, as Dale was saying, when our elected officials are presented with this evidence of just the mass popularity, and not just popularity, but agitation coming from below on these issues, that they will risk their political careers if they don't vote to ban gerrymandering. They'll risk their political careers if they don't vote to limit money in politics. And that's the language they understand. Truly, that is the language they understand. So I want to also give you some good news that a lot of one of the great things about being the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign over the last few years is I've seen the pro-democracy nonprofit sector in Wisconsin unite and work together in ways that I think are a model for other states. I mean, a lot of people, you know, used to hear that, oh, we're all in our silos, these little nonprofits, we're all fighting among each other, we are all fighting for the same dollars from the same liberal foundation, so there's turf battles and ego battles. That's pretty much not happening right now. I am, for the last few years, I've been the chair of the board of an umbrella group of nonprofits in Wisconsin called Wisconsin Voices, which is located, headquartered in Milwaukee, but operates all over the state. And we all work together. All 60 of our organizations work together, and we meet together, we have conference calls every other Friday, we strategize together, we go to each other's events, we write op-eds together. This idea that we are fighting among each other or atomized in our own little corners, not true anymore. So that's a very healthy sign for the state, and I think that's part of the thing that's bearing fruit. Dale and Tim Cohen have done a great job going around the state, and there are other organizations like the League of Women Voters and Common Cause and Citizens in Action, Unite America, Wisconsin Democracy Campaign have been working in this Fair Maps Coalition to help out all across the state, and we are seeing the fruits of that, not only in the polls, but in those county board resolutions and referendums, and there are more referendums to come. And so that's, to me, what is really exciting about this moment. It's not covered in the media. You don't read about it in the Journal Sentinel or the State Journal. You don't see it on TV, but it's happening here at the grassroots. Here's a dime for my troubles. So, really, that's mostly what I wanted to say. But I want to just read part of this quote. I handed out this quote. If you didn't get a quote, a sheet of quotes. I love collecting quotes. I have a whole file on my computer called quotes. These aren't quotes from me. These are quotes from people who inspire me. And I have them all over my walls at my office, along with pictures of warblers. My wife thinks that my office looks like a 6-year-old's, but it's an inspiring place for me to sit for 40 hours a week. And I just want to read this last one from Howard Zinn, because to me it says it all, because sometimes we can also exaggerate how bad things are right now, as bad as they are. So, and I knew Howard Zinn was a hopeful person. He was one of these people who's just constitutionally up and upbeat. So I asked him to write an essay about that for the Progressive, and I think this came from that, or from one of his memoirs. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is not only one of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. I love that image. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. To live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. So let's defy all that is bad around us, and let's celebrate all that is good around us, and let's savor those marvelous victories together. Thanks very much.